Imagine this scenario for a second.
Okay.
If you lost absolutely everything you own today, like every single penny, your entire bank account is just wiped out.
Oh, man.
Yeah, your investments are gone, and you were just dropped on a random street in literally any English-speaking country. The question is, could you predictably become wealthy again in, say, 5 to 10 years?
Wow. I mean, it's a deeply unsettling thought experiment
It really is.
because for the vast majority of people, losing their capital means, well, it means losing their entire sense of security. The immediate reaction is just dread.
Right?
You start thinking about the sheer physical exhaustion of starting over, the grueling, 80-hour weeks of manual labor or admin work just to claw your way back to a zero balance.
Yeah, get back to zero.
Yeah, exactly, let alone getting to true wealth.
And I think that dread comes from this deeply ingrained, almost universal assumption we all just sort of carry around with us. We assume that wealth is inextricably tied to luck or, maybe inheritance or simply just grinding yourself into dust at a job.
Right, the hustle culture thing.
Exactly. But the material we are diving into today makes this massive paradigm-shifting claim, which is that making money is not just something you do through brute force hard work.
No, it's not.
It is a learnable skill. It is an architecture.
Which completely changes the nature of that thought experiment you just mentioned.
Right.
Because if wealth creation is a skill, like a specific set of mental models and operational mechanics, then losing your money is, well, it's merely a temporary logistical setback.
It's just an inconvenience, really.
Exactly. The knowledge of how to generate it remains perfectly intact in your head. You simply boot up the process again.
So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive into the first chapter of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. Specifically, we're looking at the section titled Building Wealth.
It's such a great section.
It is. We are going to deconstruct the exact mechanics of how wealth is generated in the modern economy. We'll be breaking down why, decoupling your time from your earnings and mastering what he calls permissionless leverage is the absolute most important skill set for anyone interested in business or entrepreneurship today.
But to get there, I think we have to clear away some pretty massive societal misconceptions first.
Oh, absolutely.
Before we can learn to build wealth, we have to actually define what it is. Because most of us conflate it with two entirely different concepts, which are money and status.
This is where we need to completely reset our definitions, I feel like.
Yeah.
So let's look at the economy like a massive global arcade.
Okay, I like this.
In this arcade, money is simply the tickets you get from playing the games. It is just a mechanism for transfer. The text actually refers to money as social credits, like it's an IOU from society.
Right, it's society saying, thank you for the value you created in the past. Here's a little token you can redeem for value in the future.
Exactly. And if
Yeah.
money is the arcade tickets, status is your name on the high score leaderboard.
Yeah, it's your place in the social hierarchy.
Right.
Now, status is this ancient evolutionary game.
Hmm.
We are hardwired to care about it because, in a hunter-gatherer tribe, your status literally determined your access to food and mates.
It was survival.
It was pure survival. But here is a critical flaw with status. In the modern world, it is inherently a zero-sum game.
Meaning, for me to move up to the #1 spot on that leaderboard, I have to literally push you down to number 2.
Precisely. Status is totally relative.
Hmm.
And because it's a zero-sum game, people playing it often deploy a very specific strategy to elevate themselves.
Which is...
They attack the people playing the wealth creation game.
Wait, okay, let me make sure I follow the psychology there. You're saying people claim that making money is inherently evil or that billionaires are all immoral, not necessarily out of pure ethical concern, but as a subconscious strategy to boost their own social status.
In many cases, yes. It's a form of virtue signaling.
Wow. Okay.
By declaring the wealth game corrupt, they claim the moral high ground, and that elevates their status in the hierarchy of their specific peer group. But the source material issues a really profound warning about this.
Yeah.
It points out a psychological trap, which is, if you secretly despise wealth, if you harbor this subconscious belief that being wealthy makes you a bad person, wealth will completely elude you.
Because your brain won't let you pursue something it deems immoral.
Right.
It's just basic cognitive dissonance.
You will self-sabotage at every single turn.
Yeah, you'll miss things.
You will miss opportunities, you will fail to negotiate your worth, and you will fundamentally be playing the wrong game. Ethical wealth creation is entirely possible because, unlike status, wealth is a positive-sum game.
Positive sum, meaning everyone can win.
Exactly. When someone builds a new technology or a new service, they aren't taking a slice of an existing pie, they're baking a larger pie for everyone.
Okay, so if money is the tickets and status is the leaderboard, what is wealth in this whole arcade analogy?
Wealth is owning the arcade machines.
Ah, the machines that are plugged into the wall, operating and generating tickets 24 hours a day, even when you aren't physically in the building.
That is the defining characteristic of wealth right there. Wealth is having assets that earn while you sleep.
While you sleep.
Yeah. It's not a high hourly wage. Like, a highly paid surgeon making $1 million a year has a lot of money. But if they stop operating, the money just stops flowing.
Right, they have to be in the room.
They don't necessarily have wealth until they convert that money into assets, like a factory, a fleet of robots, a piece of software running at night, or an investment portfolio.
So the practical takeaway for anyone listening right now is a complete shift in your ultimate life goal. You have to aggressively ignore the people playing those zero-sum status games.
Yeah, just tune them out.
You need to pivot away from just accumulating high-salary IOUs, meaning money derived from renting out your time, and move toward acquiring and building engines that run without your constant physical presence.
But that pivot naturally forces a pretty massive question. If wealth is about owning assets, how does an individual, someone starting from scratch, actually go about creating an asset?
And the text gives us a very specific two-word formula to answer that, which is productize yourself.
It sounds like corporate jargon at first glance, I know.
It really does. It sounds like a LinkedIn post.
It does, but it's actually a profound distillation. The word yourself represents your absolute uniqueness, your authenticity, and what the text calls your specific knowledge.
Okay.
And the word productize represents leverage and accountability. You have to marry those two things together.
I want to spend some real time on this concept of specific knowledge because it's kind of tricky. The text defines it as knowledge that you cannot be trained for in a school.
Think about the underlying economic logic of that, though. If society can train you to do something in a classroom, like if there's a standardized curriculum for your skill, then society can train someone else to do it too.
And if someone else can be trained to do it, you can be replaced.
Which means your value is permanently capped. You are totally subject to the laws of supply and demand.
Right.
If you're learning the exact same generic skills as everyone else in a standard business class, the supply of your skill is high, which means the market doesn't have to pay you a premium for it. Specific knowledge is the antidote to being replaceable.
But let me push back here a little bit.
Sure.
The source material claims that specific knowledge is this weird, unique combination of your DNA traits, your upbringing, and your response to that upbringing. I have to admit, I get a little stuck on the DNA part of this.
Yeah, it can sound intense.
It sounds almost deterministic. Like, if you aren't born with some innate, hyper-profitable talent, you're just out of luck.
Well, it's not deterministic in the sense that your destiny is pre-written. It's more about radical self-awareness regarding your natural inclinations.
Okay.
We all have cognitive biases, personality quirks, and things we obsess over. The text isn't saying you need the DNA of a literal genius. It's saying you need to lean into the traits that are uniquely effortless to you.
Give me an example of how a seemingly random, non-monetizable trait becomes specific knowledge. Because I think people struggle to see their own quirks as valuable.
Absolutely. Let's take something generally viewed negatively. Gossiping.
Gossiping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone who is naturally obsessed with social dynamics, who intuitively understands human drama, who loves digging into their network to find out what makes people tick. Now, that might just look like a nosy teenager to most people.
Right. Nobody goes to college and majors in gossip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what happens when that person combines that innate, effortless curiosity with writing skills and accountability? They become an elite investigative journalist.
Oh, wow.
Or a world-class biographer. Or a phenomenal podcast host who knows exactly how to draw out a guest's deepest secrets. The specific knowledge wasn't the writing. I mean, anyone can learn to write.
Right.
The specific knowledge was the intuitive grasp of human psychology that they had been practicing since childhood.
I see. So it's the things you were doing as a kid almost effortlessly, things you didn't even consider a skill, but people around you noticed.
Yes.
The text gives another example of someone who just plays a ton of video games. Society says they're wasting their time, but under the surface, they are building a highly intuitive, deeply ingrained understanding of game theory, risk assessment, resource management.
And here is the ultimate litmus test the book provides for identifying your specific knowledge. It will feel like play to you, but it will look like work to everyone else.
That's a fascinating metric.
It's the only way you can possibly win in a competitive market over a long time horizon. If a task feels like a grind to you, but someone else is doing that exact same task effortlessly because it feels like play to them, they will eventually outperform you.
Because they won't burn out.
Exactly. You cannot outwork someone who is genuinely obsessing over their craft as a form of recreation.
We see this perfectly with someone like Joe Rogan, who is basically the modern poster child for productizing yourself.
Oh, that's a perfect case study to dissect.
If you look at Rogan's trajectory, he spent over a decade cultivating what looked like entirely unmonetizable specific knowledge.
Yeah, he was just doing this thing.
He was doing stand-up comedy, which hones conversational timing and crowd reading. He was commentating for mixed martial arts, which trains you to speak dynamically in real time. He was just having long, rambling conversations with eccentric friends.
Right.
For years, none of that was an asset. It was just him being authentically himself.
But then he attached that specific knowledge to leverage,
Yes.
specifically podcasting technology and the internet. He productized his genuine curiosity. And because nobody can compete with Joe Rogan on being Joe Rogan, he built an impenetrable moat around his career.
So audit your childhood obsessions.
Right.
Audit the rabbit holes you fall down when you're supposed to be doing real work.
That's a great way to put it.
If you love reading dense science fiction, you're actually training yourself to absorb complex, futuristic, conceptual knowledge very quickly. That is a rare skill.
It really is.
But, and this is the big transition here, having specific knowledge is only half the equation.
Right. It's just the yourself part.
Exactly. Let's say I found my specific knowledge. I'm the world's best, most insightful sci-fi book reviewer. I can deconstruct a narrative like nobody else.
Okay.
But if I'm just telling my friends one by one over coffee, my income is still capped by the hours in the day. I am still renting out my time. So how do we actually detach my time from my skill?
This is where we introduce the actual engine of wealth, which is leverage. The text defines leverage mathematically. It is a force multiplier for your judgment.
Let's break down the evolution of that force multiplier, because the chapter categorizes leverage into 3 distinct eras or forms, and the distinction between them is everything.
It really is. So the first and oldest form of leverage is labor.
Okay.
This is simply having other human beings work for you.
Relying on labor leverage is, well, it's like trying to build a pyramid by convincing or paying or coercing 1,000 people to help you carry stones.
Yeah.
The text points out that while labor leverage will definitely impress your parents, because society equates managing a lot of people with success.
Oh, totally. You have a big team, you must be important.
Right. But it's incredibly messy.
It's messy because human beings are complex. It requires immense management skills, HR departments, emotional intelligence, and constant daily negotiation. It's exhausting.
And the second form is capital, just money.
Right. This is the leverage of the 20th century. This is the Warren Buffetts and the Wall Street bankers. You use money to multiply your decisions.
So how does that work in practice?
Well, if you make a good judgment call on a stock and you have $1 billion behind that call, the leverage amplifies the result massively. You make one decision, and the money does the heavy lifting.
But both labor and capital share a massive structural drawback. The text calls them permissioned leverage.
Yes, someone has to grant them to you.
You need permission.
Exactly. For labor leverage, people have to decide to follow your leadership. For capital leverage, investors or banks have to give you their money to manage. You are constantly dealing with gatekeepers. You have to ask for permission to scale.
Which makes the third category an absolute game changer. The source material calls code and media permissionless leverage.
This is the big one.
This is the leverage behind the newly rich, the software developers, the YouTubers, the independent authors.
And this is what fundamentally separates the modern economy from all of human history. If labor is begging 1,000 people to build a pyramid, permissionless leverage is like inventing a self-replicating automated bricklaying machine.
Wow.
You don't need anyone's permission to write a piece of code. You don't need a gatekeeper's approval to record a video or publish a book.
The text uses this incredible visual. It says that an army of robots is freely available to all of us. They are just packed in data centers for heat and space efficiency.
That metaphor is completely accurate. A server farm is essentially millions of mechanical workers that never sleep, never complain, they don't require health insurance, and they operate 24 hours a day.
You just have to learn the language to give them instructions.
Exactly.
If we look at the psychology and the mathematics of this, permissionless leverage is about completely disconnecting your inputs from your outputs.
Yes, that's the key.
Let's go back to that highly paid surgeon. If they are making thousands of dollars an hour, their inputs, like their physical time in the operating room, and their outputs, their income, are locked in a one-to-one relationship.
It's a linear equation. 10 hours of work equals 10 units of pay.
But if you write a piece of software or record a video, you put the input in once. You spend 10 hours coding an app. But the output, that app can be downloaded by one person or it can be downloaded by 10 million people without any additional effort from you.
Right.
The output scales infinitely.
You earn non-linearly. And that non-linear return is the defining characteristic of a true wealth engine.
So the practical takeaway here is urgent, especially if you want to build assets. If you can't code software, you absolutely must write books, start blogs, record podcasts, or create videos.
You have to make something.
You must build media assets that work for you while you sleep. But, and here is where the rubber really meets the road, to build this leverage, to sit down and write the code or record the podcast, you need time.
You need unbroken, focused time to execute on your specific knowledge.
Which brings us to the most psychologically challenging part of this entire framework: ruthlessly valuing your own time.
The text proposes a fascinating exercise for this. It suggests setting and enforcing an aspirational personal hourly rate, and it emphasizes the word aspirational.
Right. It's not what you make now.
No, you should set it ridiculously high, far beyond what you currently make.
Let's say you currently make $30 an hour at your job. The text suggests you should arbitrarily value your time at, say, $500 an hour in your own head.
And then you must filter every single decision you make through that number.
Give me an example.
Okay, if you buy a defective item, and it takes an hour to drive across town to return it to save $40, but your internal rate is $500 an hour, you throw the item in the trash. You just ignore it.
If you can outsource a task, like cleaning your house or grocery shopping, for less than your aspirational rate, you outsource it immediately.
Yes.
Now, I have to jump in here and play the skeptic because I know exactly what people listening are thinking.
Bring it on.
Isn't setting a ridiculously high hourly rate for yourself, especially when you're just starting out and maybe living paycheck to paycheck, completely delusional?
It feels that way, yeah.
I'll give you a real example from my own life. A few years ago, I had this $20 toaster break. I spent like 3 hours watching these YouTube tutorials.
Oh, no.
Ordering this tiny little spring part online, waiting for it to arrive, and fixing it. And at the time, I felt incredibly proud of myself for being frugal. If I had outsourced that or just thrown it away, I'd feel incredibly guilty about wasting money. So isn't this aspirational rate just a great way to blow through your savings?
It's a completely rational fear. But you have to understand the psychology behind the strategy. Setting that rate isn't about arrogance, and it's not actually about the literal cash in your bank account today. It is a forcing function for hyper-efficiency.
Okay.
It is designed to create cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. How so?
If you deeply commit to the idea that your time is worth $500 an hour, but you catch yourself spending 3 hours fixing a $20 toaster, your brain recognizes the sheer mathematical absurdity of what you're doing.
Right, because I just spent $1,500 of my time to save $20.
Exactly. You are losing $1,500 of potential value. That cognitive dissonance is the only thing strong enough to break the habit of doing low-value busy work.
Ah, I see. It's a mechanism to cure the disease of productive procrastination. Because fixing that toaster felt like work. It felt like I was accomplishing something tangible.
Exactly. But it was incredibly low leverage. Valuing your time at a premium forces you to keep an uncluttered calendar. You stop doing coffee just for the sake of networking.
Right.
You say no to almost everything. It forces you to ask, is what I'm doing right this second the absolute highest leverage application of my specific knowledge? If it's not, you drop it.
The text actually says, work as hard as you can, even though who you work with and what you work on are more important than how hard you work.
That's a crucial distinction. We are culturally conditioned to worship the grind.
We really are.
But if you are grinding on a low-leverage task, if you are running full speed on a treadmill, you are just sweating and getting nowhere.
Yeah.
You have to value your time enough to buy it back so you can direct your energy toward building the asset.
So audit your daily tasks today. Actually assign an uncomfortably high dollar value to your hour. Let it feel slightly arrogant. Let it create that cognitive dissonance when you find yourself doing something cheap.
So let's trace the architecture we've built so far.
Hmm.
You've identified your specific knowledge, which is the unique, authentic curiosity that feels like play to you.
Okay.
You are scaling it using permissionless leverage, utilizing the robot army of code or media, and you are ruthlessly guarding your time to focus on that execution.
Right.
When you combine all of this, what is the macro-level result? What actually happens out there in the market?
You end up delivering immense value to the world. The text states the ultimate thesis of wealth creation very clearly. You get rich by giving society what it wants, but does not yet know how to get, at scale.
At scale being the key word. If society already knew how to get what it wants, they wouldn't need you to figure it out.
It would just be everywhere.
Exactly. It would already be a standardized commodity stamped out by massive corporations.
The author introduces a truly fascinating definition of technology here to explain this. He describes technology as the set of things that don't quite work yet.
It's a brilliant reframing. Think about history. Before something works perfectly, it requires inventors, tinkerers, and risk-takers to figure it out.
Right.
Once it works flawlessly, it ceases to be technology in our minds. It just becomes an invisible part of everyday life.
Paint that picture for us. How does that look in reality?
Look at the early 20th century with the automobile. When cars were first invented, they were clunky, dangerous novelties for the ultra-rich. They didn't quite work yet. They were technology.
They broke down all the time.
Constantly. But Henry Ford had specific knowledge in mechanical engineering and workflow efficiency. He saw that society wanted fast, reliable transportation, but didn't know how to get it at scale.
So he built the leverage.
Yes, he built the assembly line and turned this unreliable technology into a perfect commodity. And society rewarded him with immense wealth.
And once cars worked perfectly, they weren't technology anymore. They were just transportation. You saw the exact same thing with oil and John D. Rockefeller, or the smartphone and Steve Jobs. Society always wants the next new thing.
And this brings up a profound dynamic of the modern economy. Technology democratizes consumption, but it consolidates production.
I love this concept. Let's really dig into that phrase. Think about how people lived 100 years ago. Back then, only the ultra-wealthy had personal chefs or drivers or librarians to fetch them any book they wanted.
Right, it was exclusively for the elite.
Today, because of technology, a small group of brilliant software engineers creates an app, and suddenly millions of people can push a button and have a car show up, or have hot food delivered to their door, or pull up any piece of human knowledge on their phone.
The consumption of those luxuries is democratized for everyone. Anyone can access it.
But the production, and therefore the massive wealth generated by it, is consolidated among the very few people who built the leverage. The engineers who wrote the code for Uber or DoorDash own the asset.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of the internet age, the space of possible careers has broadened infinitely. Well, before the internet, if your specific knowledge was being the absolute best in the world at teaching a highly obscure microeconomics concept, your leverage was completely limited by geography. You could only teach the 30 kids sitting in your local university classroom.
Your market was geographically capped.
Exactly. But because of permissionless leverage, because of YouTube or online courses, the best person in the world at anything gets to do it for everyone. You can teach 3 million people simultaneously.
Which is why being at the extreme, absolute edge of your specific art or discipline is so lucrative today. The internet allows you to find your exact audience no matter how niche or bizarre your specific knowledge is.
Yeah, you don't have to water it down.
You don't have to water down your authenticity to appeal to the lowest common denominator in your local town anymore.
But this requires a fundamental shift in perspective. The practical takeaway here isn't to look at an already successful business and try to build a slightly better, 5% cheaper version of it.
Right, because that's entering a market where the problem is already solved. It's no longer technology, it's a commodity.
You have to figure out what society is naturally moving towards. What are the subtle shifts in human desire? Combine that foresight with your deeply authentic, unique skill set, and then use the robot army of code or media to build a system that delivers it to millions.
But none of this happens overnight. The text heavily emphasizes patience. It talks about playing long-term games with long-term people.
It's a vital reality check. All returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest.
Compound interest, yeah.
You are building a complex machine. You cannot expect the engine to run at full speed on day one. You have to tinker, adjust, and let time do the heavy lifting of compounding your leverage.
Let's synthesize all of this because we've covered a tremendous amount of ground and the philosophy here is quite dense. The true soul of this chapter is about completely dismantling and rebuilding how we view financial success. Wealth is not a lottery ticket you hope to win. It is not a status game you play to feel superior to your neighbor. And it is certainly not the result of mindless 80-hour-a-week manual labor.
Wealth is fundamentally an architectural project.
Yeah.
You are essentially building an engine.
Yes. And let's look at the schematics of that engine. It runs on a very specific type of fuel, your specific knowledge. It runs on the things that feel like effortless play to you, but look like exhausting work to everyone else.
Right.
The chassis holding that engine together is your accountability, your willingness to take risks under your own name and build public trust. And finally, the engine is given massive, world-changing horsepower by permissionless leverage.
The code you write, the media you create, the digital products you design. When you build that engine correctly, it operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely independent of your physical time.
It's running while you sleep.
It delivers exactly what society craves, but doesn't yet know how to get.
And in doing so, it transforms your unique, authentic curiosities into lifelong financial freedom. The text makes it clear that the ultimate goal of wealth isn't to buy yachts or play status games. The goal is to remove money problems from your life entirely, so you can focus on the ultimate goal, which is peace, autonomy, and happiness.
That's the real prize.
It adds about getting off the hedonic treadmill and stopping the constant sacrifice of your today for an imaginary tomorrow.
Now that we've mapped out the architecture and the mechanics of this wealth creation engine, we face a new problem. A powerful engine is useless, or even dangerous, if you don't know how to steer it.
Exactly. Leverage without direction just gets you to the wrong destination much faster. So in our next deep dive, we will explore the ultimate steering wheel for this engine, how to build the kind of bulletproof judgment that ensures you are driving your specific knowledge in the exact right direction.
Judgment is the software that tells the hardware what to do.
We will unpack exactly how to cultivate it, but before we get there, and before you go to sleep tonight, I want you to ask yourself this one provocative question.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you successfully productized yourself tomorrow, if you took your weirdest, most authentic childhood obsession and hooked it up to an army of digital robots, what exactly would that product look like and who would be buying it while you sleep?
What if everything we've been told about working hard, just grinding to get rich, is like a complete lie?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's completely backward.
Right, because you look around and you can work 80 hours a week in a restaurant. You can sweat through every single shift.
Yeah.
Sacrifice your health, skip every weekend with your family, and still never actually build wealth.
No, you won't. You really won't. And we have this culturally ingrained mythology that grinding is this ultimate guaranteed equalizer.
Yes.
But today we're tearing down that myth. We're looking at what the newly wealthy are actually doing to build fortunes while they literally sleep.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. It completely challenges our baseline sense of fairness,
Yeah, totally.
Because we're conditioned from a very young age to believe in this strict input equals output universe.
Like, I put in the hours, I get the money.
Exactly. But the modern economy, it doesn't reward sheer physical effort. It just doesn't. It rewards the strategic decoupling of your time from your income.
Okay, so that is the ultimate goal we're dissecting today in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're breaking down Chapter 2 of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. And this chapter is called Find and Build Specific Knowledge.
It's such a good chapter.
It really is. It's essentially the modern blueprint for generating wealth without relying on luck. So we're going to explore how to identify those unteachable skills you have.
Right.
Why you have to aggressively embrace public accountability, which is scary, and how to apply modern leverage to build scalable businesses.
Yeah, and this matters so much for anyone interested in business or entrepreneurship, or really just breaking out of that hourly wage trap.
Absolutely.
Because it shifts the focus entirely away from mindless grinding and points it towards strategic positioning.
Okay, so to even begin that shift, we have to correct a fundamental misunderstanding, right? Like, what are we actually chasing here?
Yeah, we have to define our terms. Most people conflate money with wealth.
Oh, sure. I mean, they sound like the same thing.
They do, but they're very different. Making money isn't an action. It's not a physical output. It's a skill you learn. And money itself is just a transfer mechanism.
A transfer mechanism.
Yeah, it's essentially a system of social credits.
Right. Okay, so if you create value for society, society hands you a marker. Like an IOU.
Exactly, an IOU.
We're saying, you did something useful for us yesterday, so we owe you something useful tomorrow.
Yes.
And we call those IOUs money.
Right, but stockpiling those IOUs is not the end goal.
It's not.
No, wealth is the actual goal. And Naval defines wealth as having assets that earn while you sleep.
Okay, assets that earn while you sleep. Give me an example of that.
So it's the factory cranking out products overnight, or it's a computer program processing transactions while you're on vacation.
Oh, I see.
It's capital in the bank being reinvested into other expanding enterprises. Wealth is the structural architecture that just continues to function perfectly when you step away.
Which explains exactly why that person working the 80-hour week in the restaurant never gets ahead.
Precise.
Because if you're renting out your time, you are inherently capped. Like, society might culturally respect the hustle of the 80-hour work week.
Oh, we love to romanticize the hustle.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
But the economic reality is that your input and output are fundamentally locked together.
Yes.
There's a hard physical limit to how many hours you can give. You only have 24 in a day.
Exactly. You are operating in a linear system. 1 unit of time equals 1 unit of reward.
Right.
But wealth is created entirely outside of that linear system. You have to disconnect the input from the output.
It's kind of like the difference between running on a treadmill and building an escalator.
Oh, I like that. The
No.
treadmill versus the escalator.
No, because the treadmill requires intense, continuous effort. You sweat, you burn calories, society claps for your work ethic.
Right. Look at them go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the absolute second you stop moving your legs, the forward motion stops.
You're done.
Right. But building an escalator, well, that takes a tremendous amount of upfront strategic thought, engineering, heavy lifting.
A lot of initial input.
Huge initial input. But once that motor is running, it carries you upward automatically.
Whether you're walking on it or just standing still.
Exactly.
And going back to that restaurant worker, they're trapped on the treadmill.
Well,
But if you compare that to, say, a software developer,
okay.
that developer might spend the exact same 80 hours writing a piece of code. That's their initial input.
Right, the heavy lifting.
Right. But once that software is deployed, it can serve 10 people or 10 million people with absolutely 0 additional hours required from the creator.
Wow. Yeah. The output scales infinitely, while the input remains totally fixed.
Exactly. So the immediate audit everyone listening needs to do is look at their current income stream and ask, are my inputs strictly tied to my outputs?
Like, if you call in sick for 2 weeks, does your income completely halt?
Yes. If the answer is yes, you have to start looking for ways to acquire equity. You have to start transitioning from the treadmill to the escalator.
Okay, but you can't just build the exact same escalator everyone else is building, right?
No, you definitely can't. That transition requires a highly unique foundation.
Because if you build a generic asset, you're just competing in a saturated market.
And that drives your value right back down to 0.
Yeah.
You have to build on top of what Naval calls specific knowledge.
Specific knowledge. Okay, this concept actually completely upends the traditional educational model, doesn't it?
Oh, it destroys it.
Because the prevailing advice is always like, look at the market, see what's hot, like data science or corporate law, go to school for 4 years and get a degree in it.
Right, get the credential.
But the argument here is that if society can train you in a classroom to do a job, it can train 1,000 other people to do the exact same job.
Yes. If a skill can be standardized into a syllabus, it is, by definition, commoditized.
And if you're commoditized, you are entirely replaceable.
Completely. The moment you demand a higher premium for your time, the market will just swap you out for the next graduate in line who's willing to do it for less.
Wow. So you cannot capture true wealth if society can easily replace you.
Never. Specific knowledge, then, is the exact opposite of a college major.
Okay, so what is it?
It's knowledge that you inherently cannot be formally trained for. It's usually highly technical or creative, and it's mostly acquired through deep apprenticeship, or more likely, just sheer obsession.
Sheer obsession. I love that.
Yeah, it's just the stuff that feels like play to you, but looks like agonizing work to everyone else.
Oh, that's such a good distinction. Feels like play to you, looks like work to them.
Exactly. It is this very weird, highly customized combination of your genetics, your unique upbringing, and how you responded to your environment.
There's a great biographical example in the source material about Naval himself, right?
Yes, the astrophysics story.
And yeah, so he's a teenager and he wants to be an astrophysicist.
Right.
But his mother recognizes his actual innate traits. Like, she sees his natural sales ability, his analytical wiring for spotting profit, and his complete obsession with tinkering with new technology.
He saw the specific knowledge.
Yeah, so she pushes him toward business. because she sees that unique intersection of skills that a school didn't teach him.
It's a perfect example. And the source material mentions some other wild examples of how childhood traits map onto specific knowledge.
Like what?
Well, someone who is constantly gossiping and analyzing social dynamics as a kid,
Yeah.
they might possess the innate wiring to become an elite investigative journalist.
Oh, wow. I never would have connected gossiping
Yeah.
to investigative journalism.
Right, or a kid who obsessively read abstract science fiction. They might develop this unparalleled ability to quickly absorb and synthesize complex futuristic data.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit,
Go for it.
because it can easily sound like a utopian fantasy, you know?
Sure.
Like if my absolute obsession as a teenager was sitting in a basement playing video games for 12 hours a day,
Classic.
right? Does this philosophy mean I should just keep doing that and expect society to hand me $1 million?
No.
Because how does a purely self-indulgent hobby actually translate into structural economic value?
And that is the crucial nuance right there. It is not about executing your hobby in a vacuum.
Okay.
Wealth is generated by giving society what it wants, but does not yet know how to get at scale.
Giving society what it wants but doesn't know how to get.
Right. Your specific knowledge is just the raw material. It is the engine. But you have to point that engine at a problem.
So it's about the application of the obsession, not just the consumption of it.
Precisely. If you're just playing the video game, you're the consumer. You are the product.
Yeah, you're just generating revenue for someone else.
Exactly. But if you've spent 10 years immersed in that world, you have developed a deep, intuitive understanding of game theory,
Right.
of dopamine loops, of human incentive structures.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. So if you take that specific knowledge and apply it to designing gamified educational software or building engagement mechanics for a new financial platform, that is when you are applying specific knowledge to create wealth. You are standing at the intersection of your innate obsession and the bleeding edge of what society currently needs.
That is fascinating.
Mm.
But it requires some serious introspection, doesn't it?
A ton of it.
Like we have to stop asking, what degree will pay me the most?
Mm.
And start asking, what was I effortlessly doing as a kid while everyone else got bored?
Exactly. You have to find that intersection.
Okay, but once you identify that specific knowledge, you run into a massive psychological wall.
You do.
Because knowing something, even uniquely, doesn't automatically generate an asset.
No, it doesn't.
To monetize it, to turn it into an escalator, you have to attach your actual name to it.
Yes.
You have to embrace radical accountability.
And this is where most people tap out.
Really? Just the fear of putting their name on it.
Oh, absolutely. We are evolutionarily hardwired to avoid public failure.
Also the whole tribal thing.
Exactly. If you go back to our tribal days, failing publicly meant you lost status, or worse, you were cast out of the tribe.
Which meant literal death.
Yes. You'd starve. And we still carry that deep biological fear.
Wow.
We want to hide behind a corporate logo. We want to say, oh, the team failed, or my boss made the wrong call.
Yeah, we desperately want the safety of the collective. We want to avoid being the single person holding the bag when everything catches fire.
We do. But the modern reality is that the actual physical risk of failure is remarkably low.
Right. We don't have debtors' prisons anymore.
No, we don't. Legal structures like bankruptcies exist specifically to wipe the slate clean so people can try again.
That's a really good point.
And in highly innovative ecosystems, a high-integrity failure isn't a black mark. It's often viewed as a necessary rite of passage.
Right. Like investors almost want to see that you failed and learned from it.
Exactly. The downside of failing under your own name is mostly just temporary ego damage.
But the upside is total ownership of the reward.
Yes.
Because if you don't take the risk publicly, you simply don't get to claim the equity.
No one's going to just hand it to you.
Right. Society is not going to hand you capital or trust you with massive leverage if they don't know exactly who is responsible for the outcome.
You have to build an unimpeachable track record, and accountability fundamentally intertwines with specific knowledge.
How so?
Well, when you operate under your own name, completely leaning into your authentic, weird obsessions, you eliminate competition.
Because no one can compete with you on being you.
Exactly. Look at the creator economy.
Okay.
Look at someone like Joe Rogan, or Scott Adams with Dilbert, or Bill Watterson with Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, Calvin and Hobbes is a great example.
Right. No one can engineer a strategic business plan to outcompete Bill Watterson.
No.
Because Calvin and Hobbes isn't a generic comic strip.
No, it's very specific.
It is the direct manifestation of Watterson's incredibly specific worldview.
Right. You can't out Joe Rogan.
You can't. They achieved astronomical success not by fitting into a corporate mold, but by being radically authentic and putting their actual names on the line.
So there's a 3-word directive in the book that perfectly encapsulates this.
Oh, productize yourself.
Productize yourself. It's brilliant.
It's the ultimate modern career framework.
Let's unpack that. So yourself is the foundation. That is the authenticity.
Right.
That's the specific knowledge, the unique obsessions, the public accountability with your name attached.
Yes.
And productize is the mechanics. It's the scaling.
Exactly.
It's taking that authentic self and turning it into the asset that earns while you sleep.
So the tactical move for anyone listening is to stop hiding.
Just get out there.
Start building a verifiable reputation. That could be publishing long-form analysis in your field, or launching a podcast, or doing highly specialized freelance work in public.
Just let the market see exactly what your specific knowledge is.
Exactly. Put your name on it.
Okay, so let's map the progress here.
Okay.
You identified your unteachable specific knowledge.
Check.
You've overcome the evolutionary fear of public failure and put your name on the line.
Right.
Now, to truly productize, you need a multiplier. You need leverage.
Leverage is the absolute core of wealth creation.
Break that down for us.
Well, it goes back to Archimedes, right? Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world.
Right.
In an economic sense, leverage is the tool that amplifies your judgment.
Okay, so if you make a good decision without leverage, you might make a small profit.
Right. But if you make that exact same decision with massive leverage, you change your financial trajectory forever.
It's a force multiplier.
Exactly. And historically, leverage came in two forms. The first is labor.
Right. Getting other humans to execute your vision.
Yeah.
Employees.
Right. Labor is the oldest form, and frankly, it is the absolute messiest.
Because humans are complicated.
Very complicated. Managing human beings is incredibly complex. It requires constant navigation of psychology, politics, motivation.
And it impresses your parents, right? Like, oh, I have 50 people working for me.
Oh, it looks great on a resume. It impresses your peers.
Yeah.
But relying purely on labor leverage is a massive friction point.
It's just a headache.
It is. It's an outdated path to scale.
Okay, so the second form of historical leverage is capital, money.
Capital was the defining lever of the 20th century. It's what built the fortunes of the industrial age.
Because money scales flawlessly.
It does. If you have brilliant judgment, having $100 million to deploy vastly multiplies your outcome compared to having $1,000.
Right.
But both labor and capital share a critical limiting flaw.
Which is what?
They are permissioned.
Ah, permissioned. They are gate-kept.
Exactly. If you want labor leverage, you have to convince people to follow you.
Right.
If you want capital leverage, you have to convince an investor, a bank, or a venture capitalist to trust you with their money.
You literally have to ask for permission to use the lever.
Yes. Which is why the third form of leverage is completely revolutionary. It bypasses the gatekeepers entirely. It is permissionless leverage.
Permissionless leverage, which is code and media.
This is the driving force behind the newly wealthy. These are products with zero marginal cost of replication.
Zero marginal cost.
Yeah.
So like a piece of software, a recorded video, a written algorithm.
Yes. You do not need anyone's permission to open a laptop and start writing a stream of code.
Right.
You don't need a venture capitalist to greenlight your podcast.
The source material visualizes this beautifully as an army of robots.
I love that analogy.
It's so good. But instead of clunky mechanical robots walking around a factory floor, this army is packed into data centers.
Right.
They're optimized for heat and space efficiency. They work 24 hours a day. They never complain. They never unionize.
No HR departments.
Right. And they are freely available for anyone to use.
It is the ultimate decoupling of time and income. In the industrial era, expanding your operation meant buying more land, building another physical factory, hiring thousands of new workers.
Which takes years and millions of dollars.
Exactly. Today, expanding your operation means a server routes your software to 10 million new users in a fraction of a second.
And the cost to serve that 10 millionth user is functionally zero. You know, we are actually demonstrating permissionless leverage at this exact moment.
We are.
Because the input for this deep dive is the time we are spending right now having this conversation.
Right.
We only have to do this once. But because this audio is digitized into media, it can be played continuously all over the world while we are completely disengaged.
And we're sleeping.
Exactly. That is a massive, frictionless multiplier on our initial time investment.
And that's the whole point. If you are relying on a salary, your multiplier is 1x. You trade 1 hour for 1 unit of value.
The treadmill.
The treadmill. To build wealth, you have to shift that trajectory. If you can code, build software.
Right.
If you can't code, write books, record audio, build media properties, you have to find a way to apply a 10,000x multiplier to your judgment.
Okay, so let's say the listener executes this perfectly.
Okay.
They have their specific knowledge, they're operating publicly under their own name, and they're using code and media to multiply their efforts infinitely.
Sounds good.
The inevitable human question immediately follows. How long is this going to take?
Right. When do I get rich?
Exactly. When do I actually see the money?
It's the most common question, and it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how the universe actually operates.
How so?
Well, the reality of time horizons requires a deep understanding of compound interest.
Compound interest. We usually only talk about that in relation to retirement accounts.
Yeah.
Stock portfolios.
Right, but the framework here applies it to literally every facet of human endeavor.
Really? Like what else?
Because compound interest is just the mathematical reality of long-term games.
Okay.
All significant returns in life, whether we're talking about financial wealth, the depth of your personal relationships, or the compounding value of your specific knowledge, they all come from playing long-term games.
Right, because the market is brutally efficient. Get-rich-quick schemes do not exist for the participant. They only exist for the person selling the scheme.
Exactly. If you're constantly pivoting, chasing the newest crypto trend, then jumping to dropshipping, then pivoting to AI consulting.
You're constantly resetting your compound interest clock back to zero.
Yes. You never allow the flywheel to start spinning.
It's just a bunch of starts and stops.
Let's look at a practical example outside of tech. Look at the real estate industry.
Okay.
If you observe an entry-level real estate agent, the job looks grueling.
Oh, it's terrible. They're cold calling, they're knocking on doors, hosting endless open house.
Right, and their conversion rate is terrible. They are grinding for a relatively small commission.
But if you look at a top-tier agent in a high-end market, the mechanics look entirely different.
Completely different. That top-tier agent might close a $5 million property with 2 phone calls.
Wow.
Expending a fraction of the physical effort the beginner uses to sell a small condo.
Why is that?
Because the top agent has spent 20 years compounding their reputation. They have compounded their hyper-specific knowledge of zoning laws, neighborhood dynamics, and high net worth psychology.
So when they make a recommendation, it carries the weight of a 2-decade track record.
Exactly. They are reaping the massive asymmetric rewards of a long-term game.
But playing a game for 20 years means you have to be incredibly strategic about who you're playing it with, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can't compound a relationship if the foundation is rotten.
No.
You have to partner with people who possess high intelligence and high energy, but most importantly, absolute integrity.
Integrity is a mathematical necessity for compounding.
A mathematical necessity. Explain that.
Well, in a short-term game, a transactional one-off interaction, you might get away with being deceitful.
Sure, you scam someone once and run away.
Right. But in a long-term game, trust is the currency that allows the game to continue. If you partner with someone who lacks integrity, the compounding breaks. The relationship fractures before the massive returns can be realized.
That makes total sense. The framework also gives a strong warning about mindset here. Avoid cynics and pessimists.
Yes. Because cynicism is ultimately self-fulfilling.
Right.
If you fundamentally believe a system is rigged or that a new piece of technology is just a fad, you will unconsciously sabotage your own efforts to leverage it.
You won't even try.
Right. Building wealth from scratch requires an almost irrational level of optimism.
You have to believe that your specific knowledge is valuable.
Yes. And that your application of it will actually work. So you surround yourself with intelligent, high-integrity optimists, you set up your leverage, and then
You just have to be patient.
you let the math work.
You let the math work. I love that. We have dissected a tremendous amount of structural theory here today.
We really have.
If we pull the camera all the way back, what is the unifying soul of this entire philosophy?
If we distill everything down to a single operational truth, it is this. Wealth is never the byproduct of exhausting yourself through brute force. Wealth is the byproduct of extreme authenticity paired with infinite leverage.
Extreme authenticity paired with infinite leverage, that is powerful.
Yes. When you find the highly specific pursuit that feels like absolute play to you,
Right.
And when you step out of the shadows and take public accountability for it so the market knows exactly who you are.
Putting your name on it.
Exactly. And when you utilize the frictionless, permissionless leverage of code or media to multiply your output,
The army of robots.
the army of robots, when you do all that, you completely shatter the link between your time and your money.
You stop running on the treadmill.
Yes. You cease to be a replaceable cog in a massive machine. You become a market of one.
A market of one. That completely reframes the daily grind.
It really does.
It forces you to stop waking up and asking, how can I outwork everyone today?
Yeah.
And start asking, how can I operate more uniquely and what leverage can I use to multiply that unique work?
It moves you from playing a game of physical endurance to playing a game of strategic positioning.
But, this introduces a massive new variable.
What's that?
If you have productized yourself and you have this army of digital robots amplifying your work 10,000 times,
Right.
then a single pivot in your strategy is multiplied 10,000 times.
Oh, yeah.
So in an environment with infinite leverage, how do you ensure you're pointing that leverage in the right direction?
And that is where the entire game shifts from effort to judgment.
Judgment.
When your hands are off the wheel and the machine is running at light speed, your sole remaining responsibility is making sure it's pointed at the right target.
Wow. Okay, we will explore the deep mechanics of cultivating that judgment in our next deep dive.
It's a huge topic.
It is. But to close this out, I want to leave everyone with a final paradigm-shifting thought regarding how we structure our time.
Okay.
The source material argues that the 40-hour work week is a complete anachronism.
It really is.
It's a leftover operating system from the industrial age, designed for factory floors where input directly equaled output.
It was designed for machines, not for human creativity.
Exactly. The argument is that modern knowledge workers, people utilizing specific knowledge and leverage, should actually structure their lives much more like high-performance athletes.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. You train intensely, you sprint with absolute maximum effort when a high-leverage opportunity arises, and then you rest.
You recover and reassess your strategy.
Exactly. You don't jog continuously for 40 hours.
No, you sprint and then you step back.
So, as you look at your calendar tomorrow morning, ask yourself, are you trying to run a marathon in a career that is structurally meant for sprinters?
That's a great question.
Are you exhausting yourself running on the treadmill when you should be resting your muscles and using your mind to build the escalator? Keep that question front and center this week. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to start by just thinking about the hardest working person you know. Like literally picture them in your head.
Okay, yeah.
Like physical, exhausting work. Exactly. Maybe it's someone, pulling like 80-hour weeks in a super busy restaurant kitchen, just on their feet all day, sweating over a stove, lifting those heavy pans.
Just totally drained by the end of the shift.
Right. And then I want you to look at their bank account.
Yeah, which is usually, well, not great.
No. And then flip the script. Think about someone who literally makes millions of dollars while they are sound asleep, like in a comfortable climate-controlled bedroom.
Right.
This is the core tension, the paradox of modern work that's just staring us right in the face. Why do some of the absolute hardest working people on the planet stay completely broke while others have built these invisible systems that just generate wealth without them even being in the room?
It's an incredibly uncomfortable realization for a lot of people because society, it conditions us from a very young age to equate physical exhaustion with moral virtue.
Oh, totally. Work hard, get ahead.
Exactly. We're taught that if you just grind harder than the next person, you'll win. But the modern economy, it doesn't actually care how tired you are.
No, it really doesn't.
It doesn't track your sweat. It only cares about the architecture of your income. Like, are you building a system or are you just a cog in someone else's system?
Which brings us perfectly to our mission for today. We are doing a deep dive into pages 53 to 75 of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, and we are going to completely deconstruct this idea, the mechanics of building or buying equity in a business.
Yeah, this section is a blueprint, truly.
It is. We're going to explore exactly why renting out your time is just a fundamental trap, how to harness the new, permissionless leverage of the internet era, and how to ruthlessly value your own time. Because the ultimate goal here is financial freedom. The listener needs to understand that making money is not about raw effort. It is an engineered skill.
It's about decoupling your income from your physical labor. That's the phrase we need to keep coming back to, decoupling.
I love that phrase, decoupling your income from your physical labor. because Naval is ruthlessly clear about this. You will never, ever gain financial freedom if you do not own a piece of a business.
Right.
And that piece is equity. Because without ownership, your inputs are directly and painfully tied to your outputs. The moment you go to sleep or, take a vacation or get sick, the money just stops flowing.
It's a strict 1-to-1 ratio.
Exactly. You give an hour, you get $1. You withhold the hour, the dollar disappears.
And to really internalize why this happens, I mean, we have to look at the underlying economics of salaried work. Like, we have to ask the hard question. Why doesn't a job, even a really, really good job, make you wealthy in the long run?
Right, because a lot of people think, oh, if I just get that promotion, I'll be rich.
Yeah, but when you're an employee, your employer is the one taking on all the foundational risk of the enterprise.
Right.
Like, they hold the intellectual property, they own the
Your
brand.
legal liability.
Exactly. They are the ones legally and financially on the hook if the company goes bankrupt or gets sued. So because they bear all that structural risk, and because they own the underlying asset, they are perfectly economically incentivized to pay you the bare minimum required to get you to just do the job.
Wow, yeah.
You're being compensated for your immediate daily utility. You're not being compensated for the compounding long-term value of the business you're helping build.
I always try to visualize this stuff to make it concrete, and I think about it as the difference between running on a treadmill and planting an orchard.
Okay, I like that.
So a salary is a treadmill. And look, it can be a really fantastic treadmill, right? Like maybe it's a high-end Peloton model with a fancy screen and a fan and a nice cup holder.
Yeah, the corner office treadmill.
Exactly, the corner office. But
Yeah.
the fundamental physics of the machine are exactly the same. The second you stop running, you fall off. The income stops dead. But equity, on the other hand, is like planting an orchard. It takes a lot of time. It requires this massive amount of upfront effort where you might not see a single piece of fruit for years.
Years and years, yeah.
But eventually, those trees mature. And when they do, they produce apples while you're sleeping or while you're on vacation or while you're focused on planting the next orchard.
That is a perfect visualization. And if we stretch that orchard analogy just a little bit further, the employee is the person hired to water the trees.
Oh, that's good.
Right. They get paid a daily rate for watering. But the employer actually owns the land and the trees. So when the harvest comes, the person who owns the land reaps all those exponential rewards, while the person watering just gets their daily rate.
Yeah.
The employer absorbs the volatility. Like if there's a drought, they still have to pay the watering guy. But in exchange for capping the employee's downside, they keep the infinite upside for themselves.
Okay, but wait, let me push back a little here, or at least, play devil's advocate for a second, because people are going to ask, what about highly paid professionals?
Right, the doctors, the lawyers.
Exactly. What about a neurosurgeon or like an elite corporate lawyer billing $1,000 an hour? Because they aren't struggling. They live in massive houses. They drive incredible cars. They seem pretty wealthy. Are they really still just running on a treadmill?
It's a completely natural question.
Yeah.
And it's a very common point of confusion when people first start diving into the mechanics of wealth. Those professionals make a fantastic top-tier living, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
But they only truly become wealthy, and I mean in the strict definition of achieving financial freedom where their assets earn for them, when they shift from wage labor to business equity.
Okay, walk me through that. How does a doctor do that?
Let's look at the surgeon. A surgeon gets truly wealthy when they open a private practice, build a brand, and attract other doctors to work under their umbrella.
I see.
Or maybe they patent a new medical device that gets sold to hospitals globally, where they develop a proprietary surgical procedure and license the training for it. They have to make that crucial shift from renting their highly skilled time to owning an asset that scales without them.
Because if they don't...
Right, think about it. If that brilliant, high-earning surgeon gets into a minor car accident and breaks their hand, their income drops to absolute zero overnight.
Wow.
That is the vulnerability of the treadmill.
Okay, so even the neurosurgeon is on a treadmill. It's just, a gold-plated treadmill with diamond cup holders.
Yes, exactly. The destination we are all trying to reach is equity. We want the orchard.
Yeah.
But the vehicle that actually gets us there, like the engine of this entire wealth creation machine, is something entirely different. The engine is leverage.
Okay, let's unpack that engine. Because Naval argues that we currently live in an age of infinite leverage, which is a massive historical shift.
Oh, huge.
He breaks leverage down into 3 distinct categories. So if equity is where we want to go, leverage is how fast the car is moving.
I like that.
The three types are labor, capital, and products with no marginal cost of replication. So let's look at labor first, because I think that's the one we're all most familiar with. This just means basically other humans working for you, right?
Correct. Labor is the oldest, most traditional form of leverage. If you look back through history, having thousands of people building a pyramid for you or hundreds of peasants farming your land, that meant you had massive power and leverage. Your decisions were carried out by hundreds of hands.
Right.
But in the modern world, according to this framework, it is actually the worst form of leverage you can rely on.
Really. The worst. Because I feel like a lot of people's ultimate career goal is to become like a manager or a VP with a huge team reporting to them. It's a huge status symbol.
It is a status symbol,
Yeah.
which is exactly why people chase it. Your parents might be incredibly impressed if you say, I have 500 people reporting to me.
Yeah, sounds great at Thanksgiving.
Right. But from an engineering standpoint, labor is incredibly messy. Managing human beings requires tremendous leadership skills, high emotional intelligence, and just endless navigation of interpersonal conflicts and HR issues.
Straight up. Drama.
Exactly. People get sick, they get demotivated, they have personal problems at home, they disagree with your direction. The source text actually dryly notes that managing labor is often a, quote, short hop from a mutiny.
A short hop from a mutiny. That's a great line.
It really is. It's a massive continuous energy drain on the person trying to wield that leverage. You end up spending more time managing the leverage than you do actually steering the business.
Yeah, nobody wants to be constantly managing a potential mutiny. It sounds exhausting. So if labor is this messy, somewhat outdated engine, we step up to the second form, capital. Just money. Using money to multiply your decisions.
Yes, capital is a much, much better form of leverage than labor because it scales beautifully and cleanly.
Okay.
If you make a good decision, a dollar executes that decision just as efficiently as $1 billion. This is the leverage that completely dominated the 20th century.
Right. Wall Street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It created the Warren Buffetts of the world, the massive hedge fund managers, the mega CEOs. Every time you make a business decision, capital multiplies the impact of that decision. If your judgment is correct, the money amplifies the return exponentially. And the best part, you didn't have to hire 10,000 more people or deal with 10,000 more personalities to get that amplified result.
But there is a catch with capital, isn't there? Because the text points out a crucial limitation. It says capital is permissioned, meaning you can't just manifest $1 million out of thin air just because you have a good idea.
No, you cannot.
Someone actually has to write you a check.
And that is the ultimate bottleneck of the 20th century wealth model. You need permission.
Yeah.
You need permission from angel investors, from venture capitalists, from commercial banks, or, a wealthy family member. Everyone is out there chasing capital. But someone holding the purse strings has to explicitly choose to give it to you. You need credibility, a proven track record, and just someone else's buy-in to unlock that capital leverage. So it inherently favors people who already have connections or who just fit a certain mold that investors are comfortable with.
And this leads us to the most exciting part of this entire deep dive. Because if labor is messy, right, and capital requires someone else's permission, what do you do if you have neither? Like, what if you're starting from zero?
You tap into the third form.
Exactly. The third form of leverage entirely removes those barriers. Naval calls this permissionless leverage. This is code and media. Basically, products with no marginal cost of replication, meaning it costs you exactly the same amount of money and effort to distribute it to one person as it does to 1 billion people.
This is the leverage that is defining our current era. And what's absolutely fascinating here is the complete democratization of wealth creation. You do not need anyone's permission to write a book, or start a blog, or record an audio deep dive like we're doing right now, or write a piece of software.
You just do it.
Exactly. You don't need a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley to say yes before you open your laptop and start typing Python code. You don't need a television network executive to authorize your YouTube channel. This is the exact leverage that created the new generation of billionaires, the tech founders, the solo developers, the modern media giants who just build massive empires from their living rooms.
There is an analogy in the source material that honestly just blew my mind when I read it. It's this idea of the army of robots.
Oh, it's so good.
It really is. So right now, as we are speaking, all across the world, there are these massive humming data centers. And packed inside those data centers, stacked floor to ceiling just for heat and space efficiency, is a massive, totally free army of robots. We call them servers, but they are essentially robots waiting for commands. When a software developer writes a piece of code, they are basically giving a set of instructions to that robot army. And once that code is deployed, those robots work for that developer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
And think about the contrast with human labor. These robots, they never sleep, they never ask for a raise, they don't need health insurance, and they never, ever organize a mutiny.
Exactly. It's mind-blowing when you really internalize it. A teenager in their bedroom can write a piece of code, hit deploy, and suddenly they have 10,000 robots executing their business logic all night long while they sleep.
It represents a profound, fundamental shift in human history. I mean, for thousands of years, leverage was heavily restricted. It was restricted to those born into royalty, or those who had armies, or those who accumulated massive amounts of capital over generations. But now, the playing field is completely leveled by the cost of a basic laptop and a broadband internet connection.
Yeah, it's wild.
Even the book we are sourcing today, the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, is a perfect example of this very leverage. Naval doesn't have to travel the globe, renting out college lecture halls, exhausting himself speaking to 500 people at a time to spread his philosophy.
And lose his voice in a week.
Exactly. The media, the digital book, the podcast discussing it, the tweets, all of that does the heavy lifting. It reproduces his ideas at zero marginal cost and distributes them globally.
Okay, I can imagine someone listening to this. Maybe they're, driving to work right now. And they're thinking, well, this all sounds amazing in theory. The robot army sounds great. But how do I actually apply these layers of leverage in the real physical world? Like, I'm not a software engineer and I don't have a massive podcast.
Right. It can feel a bit abstract.
Exactly. But the text actually anticipates this perfectly. It walks us through a real estate example that shows exactly how someone climbs what we could call the leverage ladder.
Yep.
So let's break this down step by step because I think it really crystallizes everything we've talked about so far.
I agree. This real estate progression is one of the best illustrations of the entire philosophy. So let's start at the very bottom. Level 1. Imagine a day laborer working on a house. They are doing drywall, painting, maybe laying tile.
Hard work.
Very hard work. Let's say they earn $20 an hour. This person has absolutely zero leverage. Their financial output is entirely 100% constrained by their physical input.
Right. If they work 10 hours, they get $200.
Exactly. And if they get sick and work 0 hours, they get $0. End of story.
Okay, so how does that person move up the ladder? Well, they transition to level 2. This person decides they don't want to just be the one swinging the hammer or painting the walls anymore. They want to manage the process.
Right.
So they become a general contractor. They go out and hire 10 laborers to do the drywall and the painting. Now, they are utilizing labor leverage, which, as we discussed, is messy. They have to manage payroll, deal with guys not showing up, manage interpersonal conflicts on the job site.
It's a headache.
A huge headache, but financially. They are making a margin on every single hour those 10 people work. They have decoupled their personal physical labor from the total output of the site.
Right. And then we escalate to level 3, the real estate developer. Now, this person isn't just managing the workers. They are bringing in capital leverage. They raise money from a bank or from investors to buy the raw land, fund the entire construction process, and pay those general contractors.
So they're combining capital and labor.
Exactly. They might not even visit the job site more than once a month. Now, the risk is significantly higher, of course, because they are on the hook for all that capital. But the potential wealth creation is orders of magnitude larger than the contractor's small margin.
And then we reach level 4, which is the absolute apex of the leverage ladder.
Yes, level 4 is where you combine everything. Industry knowledge, capital, labor, and crucially, permissionless leverage.
Okay, paint that picture.
So at this level, you aren't just building one house, or even a subdivision of houses.
Yeah.
You are building a digital platform. Think like Zillow or Redfin or Airbnb. You write code that connects millions of buyers, sellers, contractors, developers, and renters worldwide.
Wow.
You're utilizing the permissionless leverage of code alongside massive venture capital and highly skilled labor in the form of engineers. The upside here isn't, a $50,000 profit on flipping a house. It's a multi-billion-dollar valuation.
Yeah.
You've used the robot army to scale the real estate industry to the entire globe.
Okay, so mapping that out visually is really helpful, but it begs a massive, completely practical question. How does someone actually make the leap from the $20 an hour drywaller at level 1 all the way up to the level 4 tech founder?
Right.
Like, what is the missing ingredient? Because the drywaller can't just wake up tomorrow and say, well, I'm going to build Zillow today.
No, they can't. The missing ingredients, and these are absolute prerequisites for unlocking heavy leverage, especially capital, are accountability and specific knowledge.
Okay, let's focus on accountability first.
You cannot gain access to serious capital, and you cannot convince top-tier engineers to write code for your vision unless you take business risks under your own name. Society rewards those who step out of the shadows, who put their reputation on the line, and who say, I am responsible for this outcome, good or bad.
Taking on public risk, that makes a lot of sense. You can't just hide in the background and expect people to hand you a lever that moves the world. You have to stand out in the open and say, hey, I'm the one pulling the lever. If it breaks, blame me. But if it works, I own the upside.
Precisely. That's exactly the mechanism. When you publicly take on the risk of failure, society grants you responsibility. And with responsibility comes equity, and with equity comes leverage. Think about the latter again. The drywaller has to take the risk of starting a contracting LLC under their own name.
Right. If the jobs fail, their company goes bankrupt.
And the developer puts their name on the massive bank loan. The tech founder puts their personal reputation on the line with venture capitalists. Without accountability, you just cannot absorb the upside.
But wait, if everyone now has access to this free robot army of code, and everyone can theoretically take on accountability, why isn't everyone a billionaire? Like, if the tools of infinite leverage are freely available on just any laptop, there has to be a differentiator. What separates the person who builds $1 billion platform from the person whose app gets, like, 3 downloads?
That is the million-dollar question, or billion-dollar, really.
Exactly. And that brings us to a concept that completely rewired how I view decision-making. The supreme value of judgment in a leveraged world.
If we look at this historically, in a pre-leveraged society, the hardest worker usually won.
Right.
If you were chopping wood and you chopped wood for 10 hours, you yielded twice as much wood as the person who chopped for 5 hours.
Simple math.
Right. Effort directly correlated with output. But in an age of infinite leverage, hard physical work is completely dwarfed by judgment. A highly leveraged worker can outproduce a non-leveraged worker by a factor of 10,000.
10,000.
Because of this dynamic, the direction you point your leverage matters infinitely more than the effort you exert pushing it.
I want to make sure I really grasp this because the math is staggering when you think about it. The text gives a really great illustration. Imagine you are the CEO steering a $100 billion company.
Okay.
If you have a leader whose judgment is just 10% better than the next best candidate, like maybe they're right about market trends 85% of the time instead of 75% of the time, what is that 10% difference actually worth to the company?
It's massive.
It's worth $10 billion. That completely explains why top CEOs or elite hedge fund managers are paid tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. When I was younger, I used to think, there is no way that CEO works 1,000,000 times harder than the janitor cleaning the lobby.
And the truth is they don't. They physically can't.
Right. They are paid that much because leverage magnifies tiny fractional differences in capability and judgment.
That's the perfect way to frame it. When your decisions are multiplied by massive capital and global code infrastructure, a slightly bad decision can destroy a century-old company overnight.
Oh, like Blockbuster passing on Netflix.
Yes, exactly. That was a failure of judgment that destroyed billions in value. Conversely, a brilliant decision can capture an entirely new global market. Judgment is the ultimate force multiplier. You want to be the person who knows exactly where to apply the force rather than the person just blindly pushing with all their might.
But to apply that judgment, to actually see those compounding returns over time, you have to stay in the game long enough.
Right.
You can't compound your wealth if you get knocked off the board.
No, we cannot.
And this was a really poignant part of the reading for me. To be around long enough to reap the rewards of leverage, you have to completely ruthlessly avoid what Naval calls the risk of ruin.
This is such a critical nuance because a lot of entrepreneurial advice on the internet just yells at you to take massive risks, go big or go home.
Yeah, bet it all.
Right. But you can have the best judgment in the world and you can have access to all the capital. But if you take a risk that wipes you out completely, it's game over. You don't get to play anymore.
So what does avoiding the risk of ruin actually look like in practice?
It means staying out of jail, doing nothing illegal, nothing unethical that ruins your reputation permanently. Because remember, accountability is key. If your reputation is ruined, no one gives you leverage.
Makes sense.
It also means avoiding catastrophic, unrecoverable financial losses. You don't bet the entire company on a single coin flip. And perhaps most importantly, and honestly most often ignored, it means protecting your physical health.
Yeah, that really hit home for me. You can build the biggest orchard in the world, but if you destroy your body grinding for it, if you have a massive heart attack at 45 because you slept 3 hours a night for a decade, you don't get to eat the apples.
No.
The equity is useless to you.
You have to view your physical and mental health as the foundation of your leverage. Without you, the system collapses. So protecting yourself is a purely rational business decision, not just, a lifestyle choice.
Okay, so let's tie this together. To develop this world-class judgment, to have the mental clarity to build these massive levers of code and capital, and to protect your health, you need one thing above all else: time.
Yes.
You need free time to think, to read, to tinker, to learn new skills. But how do you get your time back when you're busy just trying to survive and pay the bills? Like, how do you escape the daily grind to build the machine?
It's the hardest step.
It is. And that brings us to one of the most provocative and, frankly, hardest to swallow concepts in the entire chapter: the aspirational hourly rate.
Hard to swallow is right, but it is easily one of the most actionable pieces of advice in the entire text.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The concept is that you have to set and then strictly, ruthlessly enforce an aspirational personal hourly rate. Naval mentions that he used to value his own time at $5,000 an hour, long before he was actually a wealthy man.
$5,000 an hour.
Yes. And the operational rule is simple. If fixing a problem yourself saves you less than your hourly rate, you ignore it. If paying someone else to do a task costs less than your hourly rate, you outsource it.
Okay, look, I have to break the fourth wall here for a second. If you are listening to this on your commute right now and you are currently making, say, $25 an hour, telling yourself your time is worth $5,000 an hour probably feels completely insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels arrogant or just wildly delusional. When I first read that, my immediate reaction was, how does that even work in reality? If I make 50 grand a year, I can't afford to pay someone to do my laundry and cook my meals and drive me around just because my aspirational rate is 5 grand.
It's a very fair critique. And it raises a really important point about the psychology of wealth versus the reality of your current bank account.
Yeah.
It absolutely sounds absurd at first glance, but you have to understand that this rate isn't about what you are currently billing clients.
Okay.
You aren't sending invoices for $5,000 an hour. It is an internal mental model designed for ruthless prioritization. Let's look at human nature. When you're starting out, your natural survival instinct is to save money by doing everything yourself.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
You spend 3 hours trying to fix a leaky sink to save a $100 plumber fee.
Yeah.
You spend 2 hours on the phone with customer service to return a $20 item. You do your own basic, repetitive data entry for your small business.
Right, because you feel like you were saving money.
Exactly. But you only saving money if you view your time as worthless. By setting an absurdly high aspirational hourly rate, you force a psychological shift. You create extreme friction against doing low-value tasks. You stop doing low-leverage busy work. You suddenly realize that spending 2 hours to save $50 on an Amazon return is actually a massive catastrophic loss if you value your time at $5,000 an hour. It forces you to ask, is arguing with this customer service rep worth $10,000 of my time?
And the answer is always no.
The answer is always no.
Oh.
It forces you to redirect that saved mental bandwidth and time strictly into high-leverage, high-equity creation. Things like learning to code, reading about capital markets, or building a product.
So it's essentially a psychological hack. You force yourself to behave like a highly leveraged, wealthy individual before you actually have the leverage or the wealth. You are essentially acting your way into the new reality.
Yes.
If you view your time as cheap, you will spend it on cheap things. If you view it as astronomically valuable, you will only deploy it against problems that can yield astronomical returns.
And practically speaking, yes, when you are making $25 an hour, you can't outsource everything. You might still have to do your own laundry. But what it does is stop you from wasting time on things you can control.
Yeah.
It stops you from driving across town in traffic just to save $4 on gas.
Yeah.
It stops you from spending a whole weekend building IKEA furniture if you can pay a neighborhood kid $50 to do it, which frees you up to spend those 10 hours building an online business.
That is a total paradigm shift. It's about protecting the asset that actually creates the wealth, which is your focused attention.
Exactly.
All right, we've covered a massive amount of ground here. We've talked about building equity, pulling the levers of capital and code, refining our judgment, and protecting our time with this aspirational rate. But we have to ask the ultimate question, what is the actual destination? Like, why are we doing all of this?
Yeah. To what end?
Right. The text suggests a fascinating metric for success. It says you need to find work that feels like play to you, but looks like work to others.
That concept is the ultimate indicator that you have found your specific knowledge. When you are doing the thing that you are innately built to do, it doesn't drain your energy the way manual labor or forced corporate labor does. It actually energizes you.
Like you get into a flow state.
Exactly. You could do it for 14 hours a day and feel invigorated, while someone watching you thinks you are grinding yourself into dust. But there is a massive psychological trap waiting at the end of this journey.
Oh, what is it?
As you begin to actually make money from this leveraged play, as the orchard starts producing fruit, the immediate temptation is to upgrade your lifestyle. You buy the bigger house, you lease the fancier car, you start buying designer clothes.
You start playing status games. You start comparing your orchard to your neighbor's orchard.
And when you do that, you are just putting yourself on a different, much more expensive treadmill. You trap yourself in a cycle where your massive income is entirely consumed by your massive lifestyle, meaning you still can't ever stop working.
Which brings me to the core question. If we aren't supposed to just buy a bunch of yachts and gold watches and massive houses, what is the point of engineering all this leverage? Why go through the pain of building the machine?
The author makes a very grounded, profound distinction here. Money doesn't solve all your problems. It won't make you intrinsically happy. It won't fix your health. And it won't make people love you.
Right.
But it does solve all your money problems. The ultimate goal of building wealth isn't hyperconsumption. It is freedom. It is the absolute freedom to wake up in the morning and do exactly what you want to do that day. It's the freedom from having to endure things, people, or environments you don't want to be around. If you have a boss you hate, wealth gives you the freedom to walk away. And at the highest, most philosophical level, it is the freedom to pursue internal peace without the constant gnawing anxiety of financial survival.
Which is such a powerful, stabilizing place to land. It strips away all the flashy garbage associated with wealth and brings it down to peace of mind.
Oh.
So let's synthesize everything we've unpacked today. What is the soul of this chapter?
For me, it's the realization that wealth is a completely solvable engineering problem. It is not a cosmic reward for exhausting yourself. It's not about being the most tired person in the room. It is entirely about architecture. You are actively transitioning your life from the treadmill to the orchard. You trade linear wage labor for compounding equity. You evolve from utilizing permissioned leverage, like begging banks for capital or managing messy human labor, to permissionless leverage.
The robot army.
Exactly. You deploy code, media, and robots that work for you relentlessly in the dark while you sleep. And you protect the incubator of your ideas, which is your time, by ruthlessly applying an aspirational hourly rate to filter out all the noise.
You decouple your earning potential from the ticking clock. You build a machine that earns for you, leaving you free to refine your judgment, play to your strength, and actually enjoy the brief time we have on this planet.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over, something that pushes this philosophy into the near future.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've talked a lot about the robot army of code as the ultimate permissionless leverage. But think about how artificial intelligence is currently functioning as the ultimate compression of all three forms of leverage.
Wow, yeah.
AI isn't just code. It can synthesize the knowledge of 1,000 workers, which is labor. It can analyze markets faster than a hedge fund, which is capital. And it operates at zero marginal cost, which is media. We are entering a phase where one person with exceptional judgment, armed with AI, can wield the leverage of a massive 20th century corporation from their kitchen table. The barrier to entry for infinite leverage has never been lower, which means your judgment has never been more vital.
What an incredible thought to end on. The tools are getting faster, which means your aim has to be that much better. But listener, knowing how to build the leverage, understanding the mechanics of equity in robots, is really only half the battle. You need to know what to build it around. What is the specific thing you should be leveraging? Next time, we'll dive into how to discover your specific knowledge. Those unique traits, weird obsessions, and skills baked right into your DNA that absolutely no one in the world can compete with you on. Until then, keep building the machine.
What if the traditional 9 to 5 job, working for somebody else, climbing a strict corporate ladder, sitting in a cubicle all day, what if all of that is actually just a bizarre, unnatural blip in human history?
Oh, wow. That is a...
Seriously, think about it for a second. We treat the 40-hour work week, the commute, the middle manager, the annual performance review. We treat those things as if they are the fundamental laws of physics.
Right, like it's just the default state of reality.
Exactly, as if this is just how human beings were always meant to operate from the beginning of time. But what if that entire structure is actually, completely against our biology?
Well, it's a premise that immediately introduces this profound tension, mostly because it challenges the baseline assumptions of how nearly every adult listening to this currently structures their life. I mean,
Yeah.
the core argument we are exploring today is exactly that. We are currently exiting the era of the factory, which was this really brief historical period that forced us into unnatural hierarchies. And we're entering an era where the global economy could literally consist of 7 billion people running 7 billion individual companies.
7 billion people
Yeah.
running 7 billion companies. I mean, that vision completely reframes the entire concept of having a job versus, being an entrepreneur.
It really does. It flips it on its head.
So today, whether you are watching us on YouTube to figure out your next career move, or you're just deeply curious about human behavior and the future of work, we're doing a deep dive into a really specific, fascinating excerpt.
Yeah, and it's a great one.
We are looking at Chapter 4 of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, specifically pages 76 to 78. And we're focusing on the sections titled, How Did You Decide to Start Your First Company and Find Work That Feels Like Play?
Yeah, the overarching mission for this discussion is to track a very specific evolution. We're going to look at how Naval transitioned from being a reluctant, almost accidental founder into someone who eventually views business not as a grind for survival, but purely as a creative art form. The goal here is to provide a new mental model for anyone interested in business. It makes this really strong case that breaking out on your own isn't just a modern financial strategy. It is a return to our natural human state.
Let's get right into the mechanics of how Naval actually got his start. Because his origin story, it contradicts almost every single piece of conventional business advice you're going to find online or, in an MBA program.
Oh, completely. It breaks all the rules.
The standard advice is always that you need a pristine, risk-adjusted business plan. You get a pitch deck, a 5-year projection, a perfectly calculated strategy before you ever even think about making a move.
Right. The whole fail to plan, plan to fail mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But his entry into entrepreneurship was driven by something entirely different, almost by accident.
It was driven by a complete accident of social dynamics. The text takes us back to 1996. Naval is working at a tech company called At Home Network. And the key detail here is that he wasn't spending his nights meticulously coding a prototype in secret. He wasn't drafting some master plan in his basement.
He was just kind of showing up.
He was just talking. He was constantly venting to his bosses, to his coworkers, to his friends, essentially broadcasting this narrative like, I'm just here temporarily. I am a real entrepreneur. I'm going to start my own company.
So he was just running his mouth.
Basically, yeah.
He says in the text, he didn't actually mean to trick himself into it. He was just looking around Silicon Valley, seeing other people starting companies, and assuming he was, destined for the exact same path.
Right.
But he wasn't doing the actual work of an entrepreneur. He was just trying on the identity of one in front of his peers.
And we really have to contextually anchor what starting a tech company meant back in 1996.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. It's not like today.
Not at all. Today, you can spin up a global business on your laptop in an afternoon for, what, $50 using cloud servers and no-code tools?
Literally from a coffee shop, yeah.
Exactly. But in 1996, the friction was just immense. You needed physical servers, you needed massive upfront capital, physical office space, and huge teams of specialized engineers.
So really heavy lift.
It was a terrifying, high-stakes proposition, so it makes total sense that he was hesitating to actually take action.
So he's going around the office claiming he's this temporary employee destined for greatness, and eventually the social dynamic just flips on him. His coworkers essentially corner him.
Yeah, they call his bluff.
They start asking, wait, what are you still doing here? I thought you were leaving to start a company. You've been saying this for months. And he admits in the text that he was literally embarrassed into starting his first company. Like he was peer pressured into entrepreneurship.
Which is so funny to think about. But the underlying mechanism here is the psychological power of vocalizing intent. But more specifically, it's public identity vocalization.
Unpack that a little bit.
So by repeatedly stating, I am an entrepreneur, Naval created inescapable public accountability for himself. He inadvertently engineered a psychological trap where the pain of staying at the company, or like the pain of looking like a fraud or a coward in front of his peers, suddenly outweighed the massive fear of stepping out into the unknown of the 1996 tech landscape.
Okay, let me stop you there, because that sounds highly counterintuitive and, honestly, a bit dangerous.
How so?
Well, if we look at modern hustle culture on social media, we see a very toxic version of this all the time. People constantly project an image of being a successful CEO or some visionary founder when they haven't actually built anything.
Oh, I see what you mean.
We usually call that the fake it till you make it trap.
Yeah.
It often leads people to become massive frauds, getting in way over their heads, sometimes deceiving investors or customers. So is Naval really advocating for using social embarrassment as a legitimate business strategy?
That's a great question, and we really need to draw a very sharp distinction here between faking competence and hacking your own inertia.
Okay, what's the difference?
What you are describing, that toxic side of hustle culture, is falsifying competence. That's claiming you have a product when you don't, or lying about your revenue to investors. That is fraud.
Right. That's Theranos territory.
Exactly. What Naval did was vocalize intent. He leveraged our biological hardwiring as socially driven creatures. We care deeply about our status within our tribe.
Right. We don't want to look bad.
Yeah, usually we view that social pressure as a mechanism for conformity, right? It keeps us in line with the group. But Naval inadvertently used that exact same biological hardwiring as a forcing function to break out of the norm.
Okay, so if I announce on social media, like, I just ran a marathon in 2 hours and I haven't run a mile in my life, that's faking competence. That's lying.
Correct.
But if I post, I'm going to run the marathon in 6 months, I haven't lied. I have just publicly staked my reputation on a future action.
Exactly. You haven't claimed to have done the work yet, but you've put yourself on the hook. And now the fear of having to post 6 months later, well, actually, I gave up and sat on the couch.
Oh, man, yeah. The embarrassment of that.
Right, that embarrassment becomes the fuel to get up at 5 in the morning and train in the rain. You are basically weaponizing your own fear of judgment.
That distinction makes the concept highly practical. It takes the fear of judgment, which usually paralyzes us, it makes us not want to try, and it turns it into an engine for forward momentum.
It's a total paradigm shift.
Because if you quietly keep your ambitions in your head, it is incredibly easy to just quietly let them die when things get hard. Nobody knows you failed.
Yep, no harm, no foul.
But if you make them public to people whose opinions actually matter to you, you force your own hand.
And this accidental forcing function is exactly what pushed Naval out of the traditional corporate structure, which really brings us to a much broader realization he had once he was out on his own.
Right, and this is where it gets really fascinating.
He began to challenge the baseline societal assumption that slotting yourself into a corporate hierarchy is the logical or correct way for a human being to live.
Yeah, like if working for yourself is our natural biological state, why do we view the traditional 9 to 5 as the ultimate safe, responsible path? Where did that even come from?
To understand that, the text maps out the evolution of human labor. Naval points out that for the vast majority of human history, we evolved as hunter-gatherers.
Okay, so going way back.
Way back. In that societal structure, there was no corporate ladder. We all effectively worked for ourselves, or at least directly for our immediate tribe.
Yeah.
We woke up, we hunted, we gathered, we created value, and we consumed that value directly. There were no bosses in the modern corporate sense.
Right. There was no regional manager in the Paleolithic era telling you that your berry picking metrics were down for the third quarter. And putting you on a performance improvement plan.
No TPS reports in the cave.
Exactly. It was a completely flat structure based on direct input and direct output. You find food, you eat. You don't, you starve.
Precisely. We evolved for autonomy. But then agriculture happened, and that required us to settle down and coordinate labor in a much more structured way.
So that's the beginning of the shift.
It is. And then eventually, the Industrial Revolution completely rewrote the rules of human engagement.
Because the Industrial Revolution introduced the factory.
Yes. And the defining characteristic of a factory is that it requires massive centralized capital.
Capital meaning money, machinery, infrastructure.
Right. An individual farmer or a blacksmith couldn't just go out and build a multi-million-dollar steel mill or a textile factory on their own. The means of production became incredibly expensive.
So you couldn't just hunt and gather anymore, so to speak.
No, because consequently, humanity was forced to adapt to a highly unnatural hierarchical model. A few individuals with capital owned the machines, and the vast majority of humanity had to sell their time to operate those machines.
We became cogs in an industrial machine out of sheer economic necessity. If you wanted to feed your family, you had to get in line at the factory.
Exactly. It wasn't a biological choice, it was an economic one.
But, I mean, we aren't all working in textile mills anymore. Yet if I walk into a modern marketing agency or a corporate accounting firm today, I still see that exact same hierarchical structure.
Right, it looks just like the factory.
Yeah, I see the CEO at the top, the middle managers in the middle, and the entry-level workers at the bottom, all trading their time for a fixed salary. So why is that still happening if the physical factories are gone?
What you were observing is essentially a cultural hangover from the Industrial Revolution.
A cultural hangover, I like that.
We have retained the psychological architecture of the factory era, even though the physical factories are largely gone for a lot of knowledge workers. We still have this deeply ingrained belief that the safest path in life is to find a powerful entity and slot ourselves into its hierarchy.
Right, go get a good job at a big company.
Exactly. But Naval's argument is that the defining shift of our current era, the internet, is actively dismantling the necessity of that hierarchy.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that, because that's a bold claim. How exactly does the internet reverse an economic model that has dominated human society for over 200 years?
It really comes down to decoupling production from massive capital. The internet democratizes leverage.
Leverage, meaning getting more output for your input.
Exactly. To understand this, we need to define something called marginal cost of replication. In the factory era, if you wanted to make money, you had to produce physical goods.
Okay, let's say I own a factory that makes wooden chairs.
Perfect example. So if you want to sell 100 chairs, you have to buy the wood for 100 chairs. You have to pay for the electricity to run the machines for that specific amount of time.
Right.
And you have to pay the laborers for the hours it takes to assemble them. If you want to sell 1,000,000 chairs, your costs scale up linearly. Every new unit has a significant marginal cost to replicate.
So to grow, I need more money, more space, more people.
Therefore, you need massive capital to scale, which requires a massive hierarchy to manage all those people and resources.
But the new leverage, like code and media, doesn't work like that at all.
No, it's a totally different physics.
Like, if I write a piece of software, or if we record this deep dive right now, we do the work once. The cost to produce it is just our time today.
Right.
But whether 10 people listen to this audio on YouTube or 10 million people listen to it, our cost doesn't change. The marginal cost of replication is effectively zero.
Exactly. It's infinitely scalable. You don't need to hire an army of factory workers to distribute a digital product. You don't need $1,000,000 in physical equipment. You can create value at a massive scale while you sleep.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is. The internet allows a single individual to have the output of an entire industrial era corporation.
Which connects perfectly back to our hunter-gatherer roots.
Yeah.
It feels like the modern internet is creating a new digital hunter-gatherer landscape.
That's a great way to look at it.
Except instead of walking through a physical forest foraging for food, we are logging on and foraging for digital niches. We are using our specific knowledge to find a corner of the internet where we can provide value directly to a global audience without needing a massive corporation to act as the middleman to distribute our value.
And that digital hunter-gatherer model is what makes Naval's vision of 7 billion people running 7 billion distinct companies mathematically possible.
Because everyone can have their own niche.
Exactly. In a localized physical economy, a small town only needs one baker and maybe one blacksmith. There just isn't enough demand for 50 bakers.
Right, the market caps out.
But on the internet, the market is global.
Okay.
Every single human is uniquely different. Everyone has the potential to be the absolute best in the world at being themselves.
Yeah.
The internet allows you to scale that authenticity. It allows you to find the exact micro-audience scattered across the globe that wants exactly what you uniquely provide.
So the key takeaway here is just a complete paradigm shift. Working for yourself, trying to build an independent stream of income, it isn't some crazy rebellious act of modern risk-taking.
No, at all.
It is a return to our biological default. Traditional W-2 employment is actually the historical anomaly.
It is. However, recognizing that independence is our natural state doesn't automatically erase the fear of pursuing it.
Oh, definitely not.
And this leads us to the third major theme of the chapter. Because if we are meant to be digital hunter-gatherers, why are people so terrified to actually leave the corporate village?
I mean, it all comes down to the fear of failure, right?
Mm.
And Naval makes a statement in this section that is incredibly provocative. He says, I would rather be a failed entrepreneur than someone who never tried.
It is a really heavy statement, especially for someone who has a family or real financial obligations.
It is. And I want to play devil's advocate here on behalf of the listener, because it is very easy for a billionaire in Silicon Valley to sit back in his mansion and say, failing is great.
Right. It's a very privileged position to speak from.
Yeah. But if you are sitting in a cubicle right now, dreaming of starting a business, and you have mortgage, you have kids, the idea of going bankrupt is paralyzing.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Is Naval just echoing that classic Silicon Valley echo chamber where failing is glorified as some kind of badge of honor while completely ignoring the real-world devastation it can cause a normal person?
That is such a crucial pushback. If we just look at the financial outcome, failing a business is devastating. You lose your money, it's stressful, it's terrible.
Right.
But the text clarifies that he isn't glorifying the result of failure. He is highlighting the irreplaceable value of the process of trying. The mechanism at play here is what we call asymmetric upside.
Okay, let's define that mechanism for everyone. What does asymmetric upside actually mean in the context of a failed business?
So an asymmetric bet is one where the potential downside is capped, but the potential upside is completely uncapped. It's outsized compared to the risk.
Okay.
Let's look at the downside of a failed startup. If you invest your savings, let's say you put $50,000 in 2 years of your life into a business and it completely folds.
Zero revenue, you have to shut it down.
The LLC goes bankrupt. The downside is severe, yes, but it is capped. You lost 50 grand in 2 years. You can eventually earn that money back. You can go get another job.
Right. The downside is a known quantity. You know exactly what you stand to lose. But what is the uncapped upside if the business fails? I mean, there's no financial upside if you go bankrupt.
True, but the upside is the knowledge and the internal transformation.
Okay.
Think about what it physically and mentally requires to try and build a business from scratch. You are forced out of specialization.
You can't just be the accounting guy anymore.
Exactly. You have to become an aggressive generalist. You have to learn microeconomics to understand your market. You have to learn psychology and persuasion just to sell your product.
Yeah.
You have to learn basic legal frameworks, accounting, team management, product design, marketing. You have to do all of it.
You are building the entire machine yourself, rather than just pulling one lever inside a machine that someone else built.
Exactly. And most importantly, you have to learn emotional resilience. You have to learn how to operate under extreme uncertainty day in and day out.
Which is something a W-2 job actively protects you from.
Precisely. So when that business fails, the creditors can take your office furniture, they can take your domain name, but they cannot repossess the skills you just acquired. You retain the entire education.
It goes back to the marathon analogy we used earlier.
Oh, yeah.
If you train for 6 months to run a marathon, you put in the miles, you change your diet, and on race day, you cramp up at mile 18 and you don't finish the race.
Right.
You technically failed the marathon. The result was a failure. You didn't get the medal. But you are still in the best physical shape of your life. Nobody can take away the cardiovascular health and the discipline you build during the process of trying.
That is a perfect extension of the metaphor. Attempting to build a business forces an accelerated learning curve that you simply cannot get by sitting in a safe, specialized role inside a massive corporation.
It's just a different tier of learning.
It really is. If you are a mid-level marketing manager at a Fortune 500 company, you only learn marketing. And honestly, you usually only learn the specific type of marketing that that particular company does.
Yeah, you learn their internal systems.
Exactly. But the failed entrepreneur has touched every single aspect of value creation.
So it's almost like framing your first business attempt not as a pass-fail test of your ultimate worth as a human being, but as an intense, self-funded university degree.
That's exactly how you should look at it.
It's like people will happily take out $150,000 in student loans to get an MBA just to sit in the classroom and read case studies about other people's businesses.
Right, theoretically.
The failed entrepreneur spent way less money and actually lived the case study.
And we really have to look at how the modern economy values that lived experience. In innovative sectors, especially in tech, a failed entrepreneur is often highly employable.
Oh, absolutely. Companies love former founders.
They do, because they have demonstrated massive initiative. They have a deep understanding of leverage and the ability to take ultimate accountability. The text suggests that even a failed entrepreneur acquires the specific skill set required to make it on their own in the future.
They're battle-tested.
Right. They are infinitely more prepared for their second attempt than the person who never made a first attempt.
That reframing makes the leap significantly less terrifying. You shift your focus away from the financial outcome, which you can't entirely control anyway, and you focus on the input and the learning, which you absolutely can control.
You're investing in your own capacity.
Right. You're investing in a permanent upgrade to your own operating system.
Which brings us to a really fascinating pivot in Naval's journey. Because eventually you acquire enough knowledge, you take enough swings, and you don't fail.
Right.
You succeed. You achieve the financial independence that forced you into the game in the first place. So what happens to your motivation then?
And this leads us to the final and, honestly, arguably the most profound concept in the entire chapter. The section is titled, Find Work That Feels Like Play.
Yeah, this is where it all comes together.
Naval reveals that his initial motivation for entrepreneurship, for making money, was purely out of necessity. It was a survival mechanism.
The text is very transparent about this. He grew up in a very tough financial situation. He learned how to make money because he had to. It wasn't a philosophical exercise for him early on.
He was grinding.
But the critical shift occurred after it stopped being a necessity. Once he had enough money to survive, to be comfortable, he stopped caring about money as the primary driver.
It lost its power over him.
Right. It became a means to an end, and eventually it just became a side effect of his curiosity.
He says that once the desperation faded, business became an art to him. It became something done entirely for its own sake, like loving someone or playing a game.
Yeah, he uses the word art very deliberately.
He says he creates businesses now just to see what he can put together. He even passes on highly lucrative investments if he doesn't find the product genuinely interesting, which sounds crazy to a lot of people.
It does. But to understand why this shift is so powerful, we really need to look at the psychological difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation.
Okay, break that down for us.
So when you operate out of desperation, that's extrinsic motivation. You are doing the thing to get the reward, which is money, to pay your rent. When you're in that state, your vision is extremely narrow.
You've got tunnel vision.
You are reactive. You take whatever opportunity is directly in front of you because you have to survive. Naval explicitly mentions that when he was younger and desperate, you become proactive. You start combining ideas in unique ways because you are exploring the landscape, not just trying to survive the day.
We can tie this back to a variation of the analogies we've been using. Think about a musician.
Okay.
When a musician is broke and desperate, they play cover songs at a noisy dive bar for 4 hours a night just to pay their rent. They might hate the songs, the audience isn't paying attention, people are spilling drinks.
Miserable.
But they are grinding out of pure survival.
Right.
They're playing Sweet Home Alabama for the 1,000th time because that's what gets them a paycheck.
Right. That's extrinsic motivation.
But imagine that same musician finally achieves financial freedom. Maybe they write a hit song, whatever. They don't just quit music, right?
No, they love music.
Instead, they finally get to sit in a beautiful, quiet studio, and they just improvise jazz. They play purely for the joy of discovering a new sound. They are creating art for its own sake.
And here is the profound economic paradox of the modern internet economy.
Let's hear it.
The jazz musician playing for joy is actually vastly more competitive than the cover band grinding for rent.
Wait, I need you to explain the mechanism behind that.
Yeah.
Because our societal conditioning tells us the exact opposite.
Oh, completely.
Like, we are taught that the person who is the hungriest, the person grinding 100 hours a week out of pure desperation and sweat, is the one who dominates the market. We celebrate the grind.
Right, because in the industrial factory era, where output was tied to physical labor, the person willing to grind the most hours actually did win. If you shovel coal for 12 hours, you beat the guy who shovels for 8.
Right, it was purely a volume game.
But in the modern economy, which is based on leverage and specific knowledge, forced labor cannot compete with genuine obsession.
Ooh, forced labor cannot compete with genuine obsession. That is a great line.
As Naval says, history remembers the artists. If you are building a product or a business because it feels like absolute play to you, You will effortlessly put in more hours.
You won't even notice the time passing.
Exactly. You will notice infinitely more micro details, and you will iterate faster than the person who is doing it just for a paycheck.
To the desperate person, staying up until 2 a.m., tweaking the code or, refining the design, that looks like agonizing, painful work. They want to go to sleep.
Right. They will eventually burn out, or they will do the bare minimum required to get the financial reward.
But to the person who views the work as play, staying up until 2 a.m. is just a Saturday night game. They keep pushing the boundaries purely out of curiosity. They're just having fun.
In game theory terms, the desperate person is playing a finite game. They want to win the money and stop playing.
Get the trophy and go home.
But the person operating out of play is playing an infinite game. They want to keep playing the game for as long as possible. The text points out that Naval now creates businesses within 3 months. Like, he raises money, assembles a team, launches the product, all because the actual mechanics of commerce are fun for him.
He's just tinkering.
He is playing with the building blocks of business the way a child plays with Legos. The money is just the scorekeeping in a game he already loves.
He has a quote in there, "Building specific knowledge will feel like play to you, but will look like work to others."
Yes, that's the core of it.
That is the ultimate competitive advantage. Because when your business is an authentic extension of your unique curiosities, competition literally becomes irrelevant. Nobody can compete with you on being you.
Which really brings all the pieces of this chapter into a very cohesive picture, don't you think?
It really does. When we step back and look at the whole journey we've tracked today, it is a complete re-education on how we view our relationship to work.
It tears down everything we assume is normal.
We started with the psychological hack of the accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah.
We saw how vocalizing your identity, like using that social pressure, can leverage your fear of embarrassment into a forcing function,
Right.
pushing you to take action you would normally be way too terrified to take.
Which propelled us into realizing that the terrifying leap into entrepreneurship isn't actually unnatural. It's the corporate hierarchy that is the artificial construct.
Yeah.
It's a remnant of the capital-intensive factory era. And the internet has decoupled production from capital, allowing us to return to our biological default as digital hunter-gatherers. We can forge for unique niches in a global market with zero marginal cost of replication.
And then we neutralize the fear of leaving that corporate village by completely reframing failure. A failed startup isn't a permanent mark on your permanent record. It is an asymmetric bet where the financial downside is capped, but the educational upside, the knowledge, the resilience, the generalist skill set, that's all infinite.
Even if you don't finish the marathon, you keep the fitness.
Exactly. Culminating in the ultimate evolution of the entrepreneur. True wealth creation isn't about aggressively climbing a ladder out of desperation. It is about reaching a state where your daily work transitions from a survival mechanism into pure, joyful, creative play.
It is about treating your specific knowledge as an artistic expression.
The soul of Chapter 4 is incredibly optimistic. It proves that you do not have to remain a cog in a machine just to survive. You can build your own machine. Eventually, you can just play with the gears for the sheer joy of seeing how they turn.
It completely redefines what a successful career looks like in the digital age. It's not about suffering your way to the top.
But, and there's always a but, it also leaves me with a massive, very practical question.
Okay, let's hear it.
If building a business is ultimately supposed to be a form of play, how exactly do you rig the game so you don't lose your shirt while you are trying to figure out what your art actually is?
Ah, right, the transition phase.
Yeah, because we have broken down the history, the psychology, and the philosophy today. But the actual mechanics of sustaining yourself financially while you search for the work that feels like play, I mean, that is a whole other puzzle.
It is. It's the gap between theory and practice.
We will definitely have to explore the mechanics of that next time.
Indeed. We have to map out how to bridge the gap between survival and play, because you can't play if you're starving. Exactly. But until we do, I want to leave everyone watching or listening with this final lingering thought to kind of evaluate your own life today.
Okay.
Think deeply about the one specific thing you do effortlessly, the thing you would gladly do on a Saturday afternoon, just for its own sake, the activity that feels like absolute play to you, but looks like exhausting work to everyone else. If the internet truly allows for an economy of 7 billion distinct companies, why couldn't that be yours?
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.